My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I am 27 years old. I never imagined that celebrating my master's degree graduation would end with finding an empty house and a note on the kitchen counter. The silence echoed through rooms that should have been filled with congratulations and laughter. Instead, my family had vanished, leaving behind only a hastily scrawled message that would shatter everything I thought I knew about unconditional love. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're reading from. Hit like and follow if you want to hear how betrayal became my greatest teacher. Growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, as the middle child of 3 was like living in a constant competition where I never quite understood the rules. My older sister Madison was 29, the golden child who became a pediatric surgeon just like our father always dreamed. My younger brother Connor was 24, the charming athlete who could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. Then there was me, caught between perfection and favoritism, trying to carve out my own identity in a family that seemed to have already assigned all the important roles. Our father, Dr. Michael Rodriguez, ran a successful private practice, while our mother Patricia managed the household with military precision. They had built what appeared to be the perfect suburban life, a sprawling house in Scottsdale with a pool, 3-car garage, and manicured lawn that required constant attention in the desert heat. The dynamics in our family were subtle, but deeply entrenched. Madison was the achiever, destined to follow in Dad's medical footsteps. Connor was the entertainer, whose football scholarships and easy charm made him the center of attention at every family gathering. I was the responsible one, the peacemaker, the one who mediated fights, remembered birthdays, and somehow always ended up organizing family events while everyone else took the credit. When I announced my intention to pursue a master's degree in environmental science, the response was lukewarm at best. "That's nice, honey," Mom had said, barely looking up from Connor's college recruitment letters. "Just make sure you have a backup plan." Dad had been more direct. "Environmental science doesn't pay the bills, Emma. Maybe consider something more practical." But I persisted, driven by a passion for conservation that had started during childhood hikes in the Sonoran Desert. I loved understanding ecosystems, studying climate patterns, and working towards solutions for environmental challenges. It felt like meaningful work, even if my family couldn't see its value. The master's program at Arizona State University was demanding, requiring 2 years of intensive coursework, field research, and a thesis project. I studied water conservation in desert communities, spending countless hours collecting data, analyzing samples, and interviewing stakeholders. My research advisor called it groundbreaking work with real-world applications. Throughout those 2 years, family support was minimal. While Madison's surgical residency updates dominated every dinner conversation, and Connor's minor league baseball prospects were dissected endlessly, my academic achievements were met with polite disinterest. When I mentioned making Dean's List, Mom changed the subject to Madison's latest medical conference. When I received a research grant, Dad asked if it was enough to cover my student loans. The pattern was so consistent that I stopped sharing good news, knowing it would be overshadowed by my siblings' accomplishments or dismissed as less important. I learned to celebrate my victories privately, finding validation from professors and classmates who understood the significance of my work. As graduation approached, I felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. This was the culmination of years of hard work, the achievement of a goal I had pursued despite family skepticism. I had landed a job with a prestigious environmental consulting firm in Denver, starting just 2 weeks after graduation. Everything was falling into place professionally, but the emotional distance from my family felt wider than ever. 2 months before graduation, I sent detailed information about the ceremony to everyone. Date, time, location, parking instructions. I made restaurant reservations for the celebration dinner, assuming they would want to mark the occasion together as we had for Madison's medical school graduation and Connor's college signing day. The responses were characteristically underwhelming. Madison said she would try to make it if her hospital schedule allowed. Connor confirmed attendance but asked if he could bring his new girlfriend. Mom said it was on the calendar but wondered if the ceremony would run long since she had a book club meeting that evening. Oh, Dad didn't respond at all. Still, I hoped. Despite years of feeling like an afterthought, part of me believed that this milestone might finally earn the recognition and celebration I craved. Graduation represented not just academic achievement, but proof that my chosen path was valid and valuable. The week leading up to graduation was a whirlwind of final preparations. I defended my thesis successfully, earning praise from the committee and a recommendation for publication in a peer-reviewed journal. I packed my belongings from my small apartment near campus, said goodbye to friends who were scattering to jobs across the country, and felt the bittersweet emotions of closing one chapter while preparing for another. Friday evening before Saturday's ceremony, I called home to confirm timing. "Mom, just want to make sure everyone knows graduation is at 10 a.m. sharp. The reception starts at noon and our dinner reservation is at 6 p.m. Oh, honey, her voice carried a strange tone I couldn't identify. We'll talk tomorrow. Get some rest. Something felt off, but I attributed it to pre-ceremony nerves. I had worked too hard to let anxiety undermine this moment of triumph. Saturday morning dawned clear and hot, typical for May in Arizona. I arrived at campus early, picked up my cap and gown, and found my place among hundreds of other graduates. The excitement was infectious. Families arriving with flowers and cameras, the buzz of accomplishment filling the air. As the ceremony began, I scanned the audience for familiar faces. The section where I had told my family to sit remained empty through the opening remarks, the keynote address, and the first half of degree conferrals. My heart sank with each passing minute, but I told myself they were probably running late or stuck in traffic. When my name was called, I walked across the stage with a bright smile, accepting my diploma while photographers captured the moment. The audience applauded politely, but there were no proud cheers from my section, no family voices rising above the crowd. I posed for the official photo alone, diploma in hand, trying to project joy while fighting back disappointment. After the ceremony, I lingered hopefully near the designated meeting spot we had discussed. Graduates reunited with families all around me, tearful hugs, congratulatory bouquets, proud parents snapping endless photos. I checked my phone repeatedly, but found no messages, no missed calls, no explanation for their absence. Finally, I called home. The phone rang endlessly before going to voicemail. I tried everyone's cell phones with the same result. A growing concern mixed with hurt as I imagined what emergency could have prevented the entire family from attending. Maybe someone was sick. Maybe there had been an accident. Maybe there was a misunderstanding about timing or location. I drove to the family home in Scottsdale, my cap and gown still on, diploma carefully placed in my passenger seat. The house looked normal from the outside, no signs of crisis or distress. Cars were missing from the driveway, but that could be explained if they were all at a hospital or dealing with some emergency. I used my key to enter through the front door. "Hello?" I called out. "Mom, Dad? Anyone home?" Silence greeted me. The house felt strange, though I couldn't immediately identify why. Everything looked normal, furniture in place, no signs of struggle or hurry. But something was definitely off. I walked through the main floor, calling out again. In the kitchen, I found it, a white envelope propped against the coffee maker with my name written in my mother's precise handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it, some primal instinct warning me that whatever lay inside would change everything. "Emma," the letter began in Mom's familiar script. "We have decided to spend the summer traveling together as a family. We've rented an RV and plan to visit all the national parks we've talked about for years. We felt this was the perfect time, while Connor has a break before his new job starts, and Madison can take extended leave between positions. We know you'll understand that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for family bonding. We didn't want a big goodbye scene or guilt about leaving you behind. You're starting your new life in Denver anyway, so the timing works out perfectly for everyone. We're proud of your graduation and know you'll do great things in Colorado. By the time you read this, we'll already be on the road. Don't try to reach us. We want to truly disconnect and enjoy this adventure without distractions. The house will be empty for 3 months. Feel free to take anything you need for your move, but please lock up when you leave. We'll call when we get back. Love, Mom." I read the letter 3 times, each reading revealing new layers of betrayal. They had planned this. While I was defending my thesis and preparing for graduation, they were secretly organizing a family trip that deliberately excluded me. They had skipped my graduation ceremony, not due to emergency or oversight, but by choice. The casual tone of the letter, as if abandoning me on one of the most important days of my life, was perfectly reasonable, cut deeper than out cruelty might have. I wasn't worth a difficult conversation or an honest explanation. I was simply left behind. I sank into a kitchen chair, still wearing my graduation cap, and tried to process the magnitude of what had happened. My family had chosen each other and deliberately excluded me. They had made a collective decision that my feelings, my milestone, my presence were all expendable. The house felt cavernous and cold despite the Arizona heat. Every family photo on the walls seemed to mock me, images of togetherness that apparently had always been conditional. I walked through rooms filled with memories that now felt tainted by this revelation of how little I truly mattered. In my childhood bedroom, I found evidence of their planning. Madison's and Connor's rooms had been cleared of personal items, as if they had packed for an extended trip. My room remained untouched, a shrine to someone they were comfortable leaving behind. The abandonment was complete and calculated. This wasn't a spontaneous decision or an oversight. They had coordinated schedules, made reservations, packed belongings, and left town while I was celebrating the biggest achievement of my academic career. I called Madison's phone again, then Connor's, then my parents'. All went straight to voicemail. and I realized they had probably turned off their phones or blocked my number to avoid distractions during their family bonding adventure. The irony was devastating. I had spent years feeling like an outsider in my own family, but I had never imagined they would make it literal. I had always believed that despite our differences and their apparent favoritism, there was an underlying foundation of love and belonging. This letter shattered that illusion completely. Sitting alone in an empty house on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life, I cycled through shock, grief, rage, and disbelief. How do you process being discarded by the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally? How do you explain to friends that your entire family chose to skip your graduation for a vacation you weren't invited to join? The practical implications hit me next. I had planned to spend a week at home before driving to Denver to start my new job. I had assumed we would have family dinners, that I would say proper goodbyes, that there would be some acknowledgement of this major life transition. Instead, I was alone in a house that suddenly felt more like a museum than a home. I took off my cap and gown, carefully hanging them in my closet where they looked absurd among clothes from high school and college. The diploma went on my desk, a symbol of achievement that felt hollow without anyone to share it with. That first night was the longest of my life. I ordered pizza and ate it alone in the formal dining room we only used for special occasions, staring at the empty chairs where my family should have been sitting. I tried watching TV, but every commercial featuring happy families felt like salt in fresh wounds. Sleep was impossible. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at glow-in-the-darks I had stuck to the ceiling in middle school, trying to understand how I had misread every family interaction for years. Signs had been there. The lack of interest in my studies, a dismissal of my career choice, the way conversations always shifted away from my experiences. But I had attributed it to personality differences rather than fundamental rejection. Morning brought no relief, only the harsh clarity of sunlight illuminating my new reality. I made coffee in the silent kitchen, the letter still lying where I had dropped it the night before. Reading it again only confirmed what I had hoped might have been a cruel dream. The next few days passed in a haze of anger and sadness. I packed my belongings methodically, taking only what truly belonged to me. Family photos stayed on the walls. I no longer felt included in those memories. Graduation gifts from extended relatives who had actually cared enough to remember went into boxes, along with books, clothes, and personal mementos. I found myself drawn to spaces where I had felt happiest in the house. The reading nook in the family room where I had spent countless hours, the desk where I had written high school papers and college applications, the patio where I had stargazed and dreamed about my future. These spaces held good memories, but they were overshadowed now by the knowledge that I had been tolerated rather than treasured. On Wednesday, 3 days after graduation, I called my research advisor to thank him for his support and let him know I was moving to Denver earlier than planned. "How was the graduation celebration with your family?" he asked warmly. I had been dreading this question, knowing it would come from professors, classmates, and colleagues who assumed I had enjoyed a normal graduation experience. "It was quiet," I said, which was technically true. "Sometimes those intimate celebrations are the most meaningful," he replied. "I'm sure they're very proud of your accomplishments." His kindness made the deception even more painful. I wanted to tell him the truth, that my family had abandoned me on graduation day for a vacation I wasn't invited to join. But the words stuck in my throat, too humiliating to voice. I began calling friends from graduate school, ostensibly to say goodbye, but really seeking the human connection I desperately needed. Most were busy with their own post-graduation transitions, but a few picked up on my subdued mood. "Are you okay?" asked Sarah, a classmate who had become a close friend over the past 2 years. "You sound off." "Just tired from all the graduation festivities," I lied again, hating how easily the deception came. By Thursday, I couldn't bear the empty house any longer. I loaded my car with essential belongings and drove to a hotel near the airport, planning to fly to Denver and have my remaining possessions shipped later. The house key felt heavy in my hand as I locked the front door for what I suspected might be the last time. The hotel room was generic and impersonal, but it felt more welcoming than the family home that had become a mausoleum of false belonging. I ordered room service and sat on the bed, finally allowing myself to cry properly for the first time since finding the letter. The tears came in waves, grief for the family relationships I thought I had, anger at being discarded so casually, fear about starting over in a new city without any support system. But underneath those emotions, I detected something unexpected: relief. For years, I had contorted myself trying to fit into a family dynamic that never quite worked. I had swallowed disappointments, minimized my achievements, and accepted conditional love as normal. Being forced out of that system, while painful, also freed me from constantly seeking approval I was never going to receive. That night, I made a decision that would reshape my understanding of family, belonging, and self-worth. I would build a new life in Denver completely independent from people who had shown me so clearly that I was expendable. I would find my own tribe, create my own traditions, and never again accept less than the respect and love I deserved. The last thing I did before falling asleep was turn off my phone's location sharing and remove myself from the family group chat. If they wanted to disconnect during their bonding adventure, I would help them achieve that goal permanently. Friday morning, I boarded a plane to Denver with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As Phoenix disappeared beneath the clouds, I felt like I was flying away from more than just geography. I was leaving behind a version of myself that had been willing to accept crumbs of affection from people who should have offered whole meals of love. Denver greeted me with cool mountain air and endless blue skies. The environmental consulting firm had arranged temporary housing while I searched for a permanent apartment, and my supervisor picked me up at the airport with genuine enthusiasm for my arrival. We're so excited to have you on the team, she said as we drove through the city. Your research on desert water conservation could have major applications for our Colorado clients dealing with drought conditions. For the first time in days, someone was talking about my work with respect and interest. The conversation continued through lunch as she outlined projects I would be involved with, colleagues I would work with, and opportunities for professional growth. Do you have family in the area? She asked as we finished eating. No, I replied honestly. I'm starting fresh here. That can be both scary and liberating, she said with understanding. Denver has a great community of young professionals, especially in environmental fields. I think you'll find your people here. Her prediction proved accurate. Within weeks, I had connected with colleagues who shared my passion for conservation work. My apartment was small but cozy, with mountain views that never failed to lift my spirits. The work was challenging and meaningful, involving projects that could genuinely impact environmental policy and community planning. Most importantly, I began building relationships based on mutual respect and shared interests rather than family obligation. Colleagues invited me to hiking groups, book clubs, and professional networking events. Slowly, I assembled a chosen family of people who valued my contributions and celebrated my successes. The pain of being abandoned by my biological family didn't disappear overnight. Some days the urge to call home was overwhelming, especially when I had good news to share or needed advice. But each time I resisted that impulse, I grew stronger in my conviction that I deserved better than people who would treat me as disposable. 6 weeks after arriving in Denver, I received my first communication from Phoenix. Connor sent a brief text. Hey, we're back from the trip. Hope you're settled in Colorado. Mom wants to know if you're coming home for Thanksgiving. The casual tone was breathtaking. No acknowledgement of what they had done. No apology for missing my graduation. No recognition that their actions might have consequences. Just an assumption that I would continue participating in family traditions as if nothing had happened. I stared at the message for a long time, considering my response. Part of me wanted to unleash all the hurt and anger I had been carrying. Part of me wanted to explain how their abandonment had affected me. But ultimately, I chose a different path. I won't be coming home for Thanksgiving, I replied. I'm building a new life here. His response came quickly. Mom's not going to like that. She's already planning the menu. The exchange revealed everything about my family's mindset. They had discarded me when it was convenient, then expected me to return when they needed me to complete their holiday tableau. My feelings and experiences were irrelevant, only their needs and expectations mattered. I didn't respond to Connor's message. Instead, I made plans for Thanksgiving with new friends in Denver, people who invited me to their celebration, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely wanted my company. Over the following months, my family made periodic attempts to draw me back into their orbit. Mom called occasionally, conversations that always followed the same script. Brief pleasantries, followed by guilt trips about my absence and complaints that I was being dramatic about the summer trip. We thought you would understand, she said during one particularly frustrating call. You were starting a new job anyway. It made sense for you to move directly to Colorado. From my hotel room? I asked, because that's where I spent my last week in Arizona, alone on graduation day. You're being oversensitive, she replied, using the same dismissive tone that had characterized our relationship for years. It was just bad timing. Bad timing. As if missing my graduation and abandoning me without warning was equivalent to showing up late to a movie. Madison tried a different approach when she called a few months later. Emma, you're being unreasonable. Family is family. We love you, but you're making this more dramatic than it needs to be. How should I be reacting? I asked her. What's the appropriate response to being excluded from a family vacation and skipped graduation because it wasn't important enough to delay your trip? It was 3 months, Emma. Get over it. Get over it. The dismissal was so complete, so indicative of how little they understood or cared about the impact of their actions, that it actually clarified things for me. These were not people capable of genuine remorse or change. They were people who expected forgiveness without accountability, relationship without reciprocity. I stopped taking their calls after that conversation with Madison. The family group chat continued without me, though Connor occasionally sent individual messages updating me on their lives as if we maintained a normal sibling relationship. I read them but rarely responded. Watching from a distance as they planned holidays and celebrations, I was no longer invited to join. The absence of family drama created space for genuine relationships to flourish. My work colleagues became close friends, hiking partners, and collaborators on projects beyond our day jobs. I started volunteering with local environmental organizations, finding community among people who shared my values and commitment to meaningful change. 1 year after arriving in Denver, I met James at a climate action rally. He was a geology professor at the University of Colorado, passionate about water rights and sustainable development. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours, covering everything from desert hydrology to renewable energy policy to our favorite hiking trails. Unlike previous relationships that had been conducted under my family's critical scrutiny, this connection developed naturally and without external pressure. James knew me only as the person I was becoming in Denver, confident, accomplished, and valued for my contributions rather than judged for my perceived deficiencies. "Tell me about your family," he said during our third date. "That's complicated," I replied, then shared the condensed version of my story. His response was immediate and supportive. "They sound toxic. I'm sorry you experienced that, but I'm glad you had the strength to build a life away from people who couldn't see your worth. No suggestions that I should forgive and forget. No pressure to reconcile. No implications that I had overreacted. Just validation and support for the choices I had made to protect my well-being." Through James, I met his family. Warm, supportive people who included me in their gatherings without judgment or conditions. Watching healthy family dynamics up close was both healing and educational, showing me what relationships could look like when based on respect rather than control. My professional life continued to thrive. I was promoted twice in my first 2 years, eventually leading a team of researchers focused on sustainable water management in arid regions. My work influenced state policy and earned recognition from national environmental organizations. The irony wasn't lost on me that the career my family had dismissed as impractical was providing both financial security and meaningful purpose. I earned more than Connor at his baseball coaching job, worked on projects with broader impact than Madison's surgical practice, and found fulfillment in ways my parents had never considered possible. 2 years after the graduation abandonment, I decided to write about my experience. What started as personal journaling evolved into an article about family estrangement and the process of building chosen families as adults. The piece was published in a national magazine and generated hundreds of responses from readers with similar experiences. "Your story gave me permission to stop trying to earn love from being capable of giving it," one reader wrote. "Thank you for showing that walking away from family can sometimes be the healthiest choice." The feedback confirmed that my experience, while painful, was neither unique nor uncommon. Many people struggled with families who demanded loyalty without offering respect, who expected participation without providing inclusion. Around the same time, I received unexpected contact from my grandmother on my father's side. She had seen the article and reached out to express support for my decisions. "Your parents called you oversensitive," she wrote in a long email. "But I call you brave. I've watched this family dynamic for years and always worried about how it affected you. I'm proud of the life you've built for yourself." Her message revealed that others had witnessed the dysfunction I had experienced but felt powerless to intervene. It also provided information I had never known about generational patterns of emotional neglect in our family. "Your grandfather was much like your father," she continued, demanding perfection but withholding affection. "I spent 40 years trying to change him and nearly lost myself in the process. Don't make my mistake." The conversation with my grandmother opened another avenue of healing and understanding. She became a regular correspondent, sharing family history that helped me contextualize my experiences and providing the intergenerational support I had never received from my parents. 3 years after leaving Phoenix, I felt ready to face my family again, but on my terms. When Connor texted about my absence from Christmas, I responded with an invitation for him to visit Denver instead. "See where I live now," I wrote. "Meet my friends, experience the life I've built." He surprised me by accepting, flying out for a long weekend in February. The visit was stilted at first. We had to navigate years of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding. But gradually, we found common ground in shared memories of childhood and mutual frustration with family dynamics. "I never realized how differently they treated you," he admitted as we hiked through Rocky Mountain National Park. "I was too caught up in being the favorite to notice." His acknowledgement didn't excuse his participation in my exclusion, but it offered hope for rebuilding our relationship on more honest foundations. He returned to Phoenix with a better understanding of why I had chosen distance and respect for the life I had created. Madison never visited, though she occasionally sent updates about her medical practice and children. Our relationship remained cordial but distant, two people connected by genetics but not by genuine affection or understanding. My parents made no effort to repair what they had broken. Occasional holiday cards arrived with generic messages, but no acknowledgement of their role in our estrangement or interest in genuine reconciliation. I came to see this as their choice rather than my failure, a reflection of their limitations rather than my worthiness. The hardest part was accepting that some relationships cannot be healed through individual effort alone. I could become the most successful, accomplished, wonderful person in the world, and my parents might still see me as an afterthought. Their inability to value me said everything about them and nothing about my inherent worth. 4 years after graduation, I married James in a ceremony surrounded by chosen family, colleagues, friends, my grandmother, and Connor, who had continued working to rebuild our relationship. The celebration was small but genuine, filled with people who truly wanted to witness our commitment. My parents didn't attend, though they had been invited. They sent a card with a generic congratulations message and a modest gift. Madison called the day after to ask about the ceremony details, but offered no explanation for her absence. Their reactions no longer surprised or devastated me. I had learned to find validation from people capable of genuine support rather than seeking it from those determined to withhold it. The wedding was perfect precisely because it reflected my values and relationships rather than family expectations or obligations. Every person present had chosen to be there, wanted to celebrate our happiness, and contributed to the joy of the occasion. 5 years after being abandoned on graduation day, I realized that my family's betrayal had been an unexpected gift. Being forced to build a life independent of their approval had led me to discover my true worth, develop genuine relationships, and pursue meaningful work without compromise. The woman who had worn her cap and gown alone in an empty house bore little resemblance to the confident professional now leading environmental policy initiatives and speaking at national conferences. The transformation wasn't just external, it was fundamental. A complete reconstruction of identity based on authentic self-worth rather than external validation. Sometimes people ask if I regret cutting ties with my family. The question misunderstands what happened. I didn't cut ties. They cut me loose when it was convenient for them. I simply refused to chase after people who had shown me I was expendable. Would I welcome genuine attempts at reconciliation? Perhaps, but such attempts would require acknowledgement of harm caused, understanding of consequences, and commitment to change. Generic holiday cards and guilt trips don't qualify as relationship repair. The life I've built in Denver is rich with meaningful work, loving relationships, and authentic connections. I found my tribe among people who value environmental conservation, who appreciate intellectual curiosity, who celebrate achievements without comparison to others. My chosen family includes James, his relatives who have embraced me completely, colleagues who have become lifelong friends, my grandmother who provides intergenerational wisdom, and Connor, who has worked to understand and repair our relationship. These people see my worth without question, support my dreams without condition, and celebrate my successes without diminishing them. This is what family should feel like, not the conditional acceptance I had accepted as normal for 27 years. The environmental consulting firm where I work has grown significantly, and I now serve as Senior Director of Policy Development. My research continues to influence water management strategies across the Western United States. The work provides both financial security and deep satisfaction, proving that passion and practicality can align when you're free to pursue your authentic path. Recently, I was asked to speak at Arizona State University's graduation ceremony. Standing at the podium where I had once received my diploma alone, I addressed new graduates about building resilience, finding their paths, and creating families of choice when biological families fall short. Your worth is not determined by who shows up for your achievements, I told them. It's determined by how you respond when people let you down, how you rebuild after betrayal, and how you choose to love and be loved going forward. After the ceremony, I drove past my childhood home in Scottsdale. The new owners had updated the landscaping and painted the exterior, but the basic structure remained the same. I felt nothing, no nostalgia, no anger, no regret. It was simply a house where I had once lived, a chapter of my story that had ended. My real home is now in Denver, in the condo James and I share, surrounded by mountains and filled with books, art, and plants that reflect our shared values. The walls display photos from our adventures, of awards from my professional work, and images of the people who truly matter to us. The guest room stands ready for visits from my grandmother, Connor, and friends from across the country who have become family through choice rather than chance. These are relationships built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and genuine affection, the foundation of authentic belonging. Looking back, I can see that my family's abandonment, while cruel in the moment, freed me to discover who I could become when not constrained by their limited vision of my worth. Being discarded forced me to prove my value to myself, leading to achievements and relationships I might never have pursued otherwise. The pain was real and the healing took years, but the growth was profound. I learned that family is not defined by genetics but by choice, not by obligation but by love, not by what you're born into, but by what you build. To anyone reading this who has experienced similar family betrayal, know that your worth is not diminished by other people's inability to see it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop seeking approval from people incapable of giving it and start building relationships with those who value your authentic self. The garbage bags at the gate in Leah's story became keys to her own front door. My empty house on graduation day became the foundation for a home filled with genuine love and respect. Sometimes the most painful endings truly do lead to the most beautiful beginnings. What began as abandonment became liberation. What felt like rejection became redirection. What seemed like loss became the greatest gain, the discovery of my own strength, worth, and capacity for building the life I truly deserved. If you've experienced family estrangement or are building your own chosen family, share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Remember that walking away from toxicity isn't giving up, it's growing up into the person you were meant to become. Thank you for reading, and remember that your worth is not up for debate, your dreams are not too small or impractical, and your need for respect and genuine love is not negotiable. Sometimes the family you need is the one you create for yourself.